There's something massive going on in the tech world right now, and it's not coming from Silicon Valley. It's coming straight out of China. It's been just a month since the Chinese company DeepSeek shook the global AI market and crushed GPU stock prices, and now China is back with something even more mind-blowing, a brand new GPU developed by Huawei that could potentially end NVIDIA's dominance in AI hardware. Back when DeepSeek made headlines, the tech community couldn't believe what they were seeing, not because the model was revolutionary, but because of how cheaply they trained it. DeepSeek's R1 model was reportedly trained for just $6 million, while similar models from OpenAI cost upwards of $100 million. And the kicker, DeepSeek didn't even use NVIDIA's most powerful chips. Instead, they used a combination of older A100 GPUs and China-specific H800 and H20 versions of NVIDIA's H100. That shook the entire industry. For the first time, people started seriously questioning the belief that cutting-edge AI models could only be trained on the world's most powerful and expensive GPUs. The DeepSeek R1 model, trained for just $6 million, threw a wrench into everything we thought we knew. OpenAI reportedly spent over $100 million training a similar scale model, and here was a Chinese startup doing it for a fraction of the cost, and without access to the latest NVIDIA chips. Within days of the announcement, DeepSeek gained millions of users through their open platform and API demos. Twitter was flooded with threads questioning whether we had been sold a dream by Western AI companies. If DeepSeek could do it for $6 million, where exactly are the billions being spent by US companies going? How much of it is actually required? And how much of it is just hype, marketing, and inflated infrastructure?
The S&P 500 fell about 2% when the market opened, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq sank 3.5%.
NVIDIA's stock dropped by more than 10% within the week, following DeepSeek's R1 announcement. That's a loss of tens of billions of dollars in market value in just a few trading sessions. Investors started panicking. The logic was simple. If Chinese companies could build competitive AI models without needing NVIDIA's top-tier H100 chips, then why would they keep buying them? And the timing couldn't have been more ironic. Just days earlier, President Donald Trump had made headlines by announcing a massive $500 billion AI funding package aimed at keeping the US ahead in the global AI race. But right as the ink dried on that announcement, China dropped a two-punch combo, first with DeepSeek, and then with Huawei's bombshell GPU reveal. The company behind it, none other than Huawei.
Huawei positions itself as self-reliant, challenging Western dominance not only in smartphones, but this of course has implications for the generative AI arms race as well.
Yes, the same company that's been at the center of US sanctions and technology restrictions for years. But despite all the odds, they've just built a chip that could threaten both NVIDIA and Intel's positions in the AI and GPU space. This isn't just about another GPU release. This could be a turning point in the global GPU race.
Able to train AI models using Chinese chips from the likes of Alibaba and Huawei at a 20% cheaper cost.
Huawei's latest chip is called the Ascend 901B, and it's already showing some serious potential. The Ascend 910B's performance at 8-bit precision clocks and at around 512 teraflops. That number might not mean much on its own, but when you compare it to NVIDIA's H20 GPU, which is currently the best GPU NVIDIA is allowed to sell in China, the 910B actually performs better in some key areas. This is the first time we're seeing a Chinese company, especially one under strict sanctions like Huawei, manage to pull this off.
The MIT Technology Review reported this is likely an unintended outcome of US export controls on high-end AI chips to China, which is forcing startups in the country to prioritize efficiency.
Huawei isn't just building chips for the sake of it. They're already using the Ascend 910B to run powerful AI models on their own cloud platform. So it's not just theory, they're actually using this chip in production. That's what makes this even more impressive. It's one thing to design a powerful chip, but it's another thing entirely to put it to work at scale. According to reports from the Wall Street Journal, Huawei has been telling potential customers that their chip is comparable to NVIDIA's H100, which is one of the most advanced GPUs available today, and Huawei isn't stopping there. Their next chip, the Ascend 910C, is already in development. It's expected to be even more powerful and handled by China's own semiconductor manufacturer, SMIC. This process is roughly equivalent to TSMC's 6nm technology. What makes the 910C particularly interesting is that it's designed as a dual die chip, essentially combining two GPUs into one package. This approach is similar to NVIDIA's new Blackwell chip, chips, which also use a dual die structure to boost performance. But this is where things get complicated. Manufacturing dual die GPUs isn't easy. It requires advanced packaging technologies to connect the two dies and make them function as one unit. NVIDIA uses something called Chip-on-Wafer-on-Substrate. It's a very sophisticated packaging method that ensures fast communication between the two chips and stable performance under high workloads. The problem? SMIC doesn't have access to Chip-on-Wafer-on-Substrate or any other advanced packaging technologies. That's a huge challenge for Huawei. Right now, SMIC's yield on the N+3 process is only about 20%. That means out of every 100 chips manufactured, only 20 are good enough to be used. That means out of every 100 chips manufactured, only 20 are good enough to be used. The rest are defective and have to be thrown away. And if Huawei tries to manufacture the dual-die Ascend 910C using this process without advanced packaging, the failure rate could be even worse. These yield issues are one of the biggest bottlenecks in China's chip industry today. But Huawei isn't backing down. Instead of relying entirely on SMIC, they are working on building a completely self-reliant supply chain. That includes not just designing their own chips, but also creating their own EDA tools, the software used by engineers to design semiconductors. They're even securing their own manufacturing equipment and memory production capabilities. Basically, Huawei wants to control everything from design to manufacturing, all within China. And that brings us to another major hurdle: memory. High-performance GPUs like the Ascend series rely heavily on high bandwidth memory, or HBM, which allows data to move quickly in and out of the GPU core.
China is going the opposite way, where they're going for cheaper chips, but they're changing and making the computational model more efficient. So it's a very different way of doing things here.
Right now, China doesn't have any domestic HBM production, but companies like Changshin Memory Technologies, along with Huawei, are trying to develop it. If they succeed, it would be a huge step toward full independence in the GPU space. So what does all this mean for NVIDIA and Intel? Well, for years they've dominated the global GPU market. NVIDIA's GPUs power nearly every major AI model, while Intel has been trying to gain ground with its own accelerators. But now they're facing serious competition from a company that was previously seen as lagging behind due to international sanctions. In fact, before export controls were tightened, NVIDIA held almost 90% of the GPU market in China. But over the past few years, that dominance has been slowly eroding. Huawei, along with other companies, have been building their own GPUs, targeting everything from gaming to AI training and data centers. If you like this type of content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more.